this is Lenny Cameron. I am here with Cara Sue Achterberg, and I loved this book. We're going to talk about Blind Turn. Oh my goodness, this is a book that I had to keep reading. I couldn't put it down. I was so into this story. Congratulations, because I believe it also won Book of the Year from the Maxy Awards. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I did, and I'm so excited that you liked it.
Yay. So let's tell people about the book. Oh, it's 5 stars for me. I need to write my review actually this week. I know it came out earlier in the year. I think it came out back in January, but I just read it like in the last few weeks. So thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start by telling people a little bit about the book itself. Why don't you give folks a sense of the story and what Blind Turn is about?
So it's a mother-daughter story, and it's really a story about forgiveness and in the aftermath of a texting and driving accident. It's a fatal texting and driving accident. And it was sort of the pondering that question of like, if your kid does something awful, how do you get beyond that? How does anybody get beyond that? And yeah, that's kind of, I don't want to give anything away, but that's the premise.
And I'd love to share like a review. I pulled in a review here from the book that I think might give people a good sense of it. So let's take a quick peek. This one is from Kelly Estes, who is an amazing author herself, a USA Today bestselling author. People might know her from The Girl Who Wrote in Silk. A heart-wrenching telling of any parent's nightmare when our teenager makes a decision or a mistake that has lifelong repercussions. How these characters pull together to survive incredibly difficult times is a testament to the power of love and family. This book will stay in my mind and heart for a long time. What a beautiful blurb from Kelly.
I know, and I love her, so that was huge for me.
So I'm almost hesitant to ask the inspiration for this one because, like you said, right, it's like every parent's nightmare. I'm a step parent myself, and that nightmare scenario of discovering that your kid has been in an accident, has hurt someone. Oh my goodness, like where did the whole concept come from? How did the genesis of this come about?
Gosh, it was a while ago. So I have three now young adults, but at the time I had 3 teenagers going through that whole, and it is the hardest thing to do as a parent. I believe it way harder than the little kid stage is teaching a child to drive. And I was really, I was in the midst of that. And right about that time in another county over from us, there was this tragic accident where a young man hit a family of 4 in a car head on. That's not what happens in my story. Head on, and killed all of them. And there was no explanation. Nobody knew what made it happen. And it was just the most tragic story. And I couldn't get past thinking, like, he was 18. What if that was my kid? Like, how do you move from there? And so that sort of was how I started it, like writing my way through my worst nightmare. I do that a lot in my parenting. Like, that's how I figure it out, is by writing.
Wow. And, I've been reading up because it's slightly relevant to a story I'm working on myself. And there's this concept called moral injury, which is the idea that if something horrible happens, like you do it, like that example of someone killing people in a car accident, that you're unable to think of yourself as a good person after that you're basically unable to kind of bring these two ideas together, that I'm a good person and I deserve to exist in the world. And I did this thing, which is horrific and bad. And so I really, oh my goodness, I learned so much from reading this book. Thank you for being a little bit of a role model at the moment that I needed to read a book like this. So how did it change? Like, this is not your first rodeo, not your first book, right? And so like, how did it change over time? And how's your whole process of writing and editing changed, if you want to share that, like compared to where you started?
So I wrote this book a long time ago, the first time. I've actually written, like, people always say, did you change anything? I changed every word at least once, probably twice. So I rewrote this book 3 different times because I wrote it initially just strictly from the mother's point of view, the entire thing, and then gave it to an agent who said, this is a young adult story. You should write this as a young adult story. So I went back to the drawing board, rewrote the entire book completely from the teenager's viewpoint. And then my current agent now, Carly, represents women's fiction. And so I told her I have this young adult book. She was representing me for my dog memoir, one of them. And she said, well, what would you do with it if it was a women's fiction and not young adult? And so I went back again and went back through the whole book again. And I weaved the two versions together. And that's why the voices split back and forth between Jess, she was Jem at the time, Jess and Liz. And so it was, a really, really long process with this book because I rewrote it so many times. But I feel like it was the best. The last version was the best because you really do need both sides. It was both of their stories. I'm a mom, so it was for me the mom story, but then I couldn't understand it unless I understood what the daughter was going through. So I think it all worked out, even though it was a long, long, long winding road.
Oh, man, it definitely worked from my perspective because like the mom is so worried about her daughter and she's trying to do the right thing by her daughter in this, dramatic, horrible situation. But also when you're hearing the daughter's perspective, you're worrying even more for the mom. Like from my perspective, that was part of what kept me turning the pages is like, oh my goodness, is she going to be able to help her daughter here? And so like, I felt like even having that daughter's perspective actually made the mom's perspective more dramatic because you at points knew more than she did, if that made sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what about writing advice? Like I said, this is not your first rodeo. This is an award-winning book of the year. What do you advise people who are maybe a little farther like back in that journey, or maybe going through some of what you did of like, do I write it in this perspective, that point of view? Do I rewrite it? Do I do what an agent asked me? Like, what have you learned from that whole perspective and experience that you might want to share?
I have two mantras that I teach creative writing sometimes. And there are two things that I always tell everyone, but all bets are off, I feel like, with the whole pandemic world. But the first one is to just keep throwing spaghetti at the wall. Something will stick. Because it's so hard. And people will send out some piece that they've worked on, and they get a rejection and they think, oh God, I'm awful. Or maybe that happens 10 times. And the thing is that, as you know, in the publishing world, especially if you're just trying to get an agent or your agent's trying to sell your book, it's a needle in the haystack thing. Like you got to find the right person who not only loves your story, but loves the way you write and wants to spend a lot of time with you and your story. And it's got to be just right. So a lot of people are going to say, no, it's not for me. And it doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with your writing. So when I was first starting out and I was freelancing a lot of magazine articles, I called it throwing spaghetti at the wall. So I had this book and I wrote spaghetti on the front of it, and I would write in it everything I sent. I would write where I sent it, who I sent it to, when I should hear back, blah, blah, blah. And then I had a color coding system where if it was a rejection, I colored it one color. And if I got it, another color, if they gave me some feedback, I had this whole system. And it was just a way to have a little control over a very what felt like an uncontrollable situation. But that whole idea that if you just put enough stuff out there, eventually something will stick. And so you just have to, write for anybody and everybody. Whoever wants you to write something, write it, because you don't know what connection is going to pay off. And if you really love to write, then you write. So that's the first piece. And the other piece is to always say to yourself, I have nothing to lose. That's what I used to say to myself when I was like terrified to hit send. I would be like, I have nothing to lose. They don't know me. It's not going to have, I'm just sending it. And so that gave me the courage sometime to send it to some of the bigger outlets, and especially when I was freelancing. And so those two things.
I love that you teach creative writing, and you should. This book is so well written, and I love the emotion. You drew me into the emotion in this book. But what do you see your students struggle with the most? Like as a teacher, what are the things you consistently see students kind of really have to work hard on?
They write too much. They overwrite and they write too much. And because they feel like they have to tell everything. And there's some famous writer who said, assume they're wearing pants. And I always use that when I'm teaching, because you feel like you have to tell every little step, but you need to, give your reader some credit. They're pretty smart. And they're going to assume that your character's wearing pants, unless you told them they weren't wearing pants. And they're going to assume you closed the door when you left, all those little things that you don't need to give every single detail. Because it just bogs it down and it's hard. So that's probably overwriting for sure is the biggest one, just the telling and not showing and telling me too much.
So what do you enjoy reading when you have time to read? What genre, what kind of books? Any recommendations for us?
So I love, of course, to read women's fiction. I just finished one that I love called Take What You Can Carry. I think it's Gian, if that's how you say her name, Gian Sardar. And it was a beautiful, beautiful book. And I loved it. I'm not going to say any more about it. I mean, I could It's a little, I mean, it's really, really good. That one was wonderful. And then the other thing that I'm reading a lot of right now are what I call dog books, because I love reading about dogs and I am very deep into dog rescue. And so I just finished When Harry Met Minnie, which is adorable. It's by Martha Techner. She's on CBS Good Morning or one of those shows. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful story of friendship between, well, two dogs, but also two women and two famous women. And it's just a really great story. So I loved both. Those are the two I finished this week that I really enjoyed.
Oh, beautiful. I will put the links to both of those on the episode page. Those are two good recommendations. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And let's take a quick peek before we wrap up at how people can connect with you. You are on Instagram, you're at Cara Sue Achterberg, ACH, and we'll put that in the episode notes too. And then carawrites.com is your website. And I could talk to you all day because I think you have so much insight, but is there anything I haven't asked that you wanted to be sure to say about this book or about to other writers or anything at all? What haven't I asked that you wanted to make sure to mention?
Right now the dog thing is totally on my mind because I'm also in the process of forming a nonprofit, or we did form it, but we're getting legal about it, I guess, called Who Will Let the Dogs Out? And it's just to raise awareness and resources for homeless dogs and the heroes who fight for them. And so I've been really deep into that right now because I just got back from touring 13 shelters and dog pounds. And this weekend I'm going to see a screening at a film festival of a film I helped produce during the pandemic about rescue in the dog pounds of Tennessee. So yeah, I'm a novelist, but the dogs kind of take over my world all the time. And right now, in particular, they're really, really in my mind and my heart. So, but there are links to all that. If you go to carawrites.com, there are links to my blog that I write about the rescues and about my foster dogs, and of course, writing. So they're all on there. I blog a lot.
Awesome. Well, that's such a huge cause. And when you get through trying to solve it in the US, Mexico really needs it too. We have a lot of street dogs and even roof dogs that are not. I have one next door that I feel so bad for. He's just on the roof 100% of the day in the sun and nobody cares for him. It's sad. So yes, we need it down here as well. So, when you solve world hunger, or at least dog homelessness and hunger in the States, come on and help us here too. So. It has been a pleasure to talk to you. I encourage folks to read Blind Turn. It is such a great book. It's got such great reviews. I noticed the reviews are talking about how much of a page turner, people couldn't put it down, how compelling, thought-provoking. I agree with all of those assessments. So thank you for spending time with me and talking to me about a book that I really enjoyed. Thanks so much.
Sure. Thank you for having me on.
Bye.